A desperate mother on a rain-slick street offers her little boy's battered bike for a few coins. The city's most feared mafia boss stops, buys the bike, and instead of walking away, he gives them shelter, payment, and a rule: stay inside. Protection turns into possession. A street mugging, a ruthless rescue, and a single ledger found in a locked drawer hint that her past and his empire are tangled deeper than she thinks. A jealous lieutenant watches. A determined detective whispers a brutal choice: testify and be safe, or stay and remake a dangerous man. Who will she trust, the man who saved them, or the law that could tear them both apart? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The late afternoon rain painted the city streets in a glossy sheen, transforming the grimy concrete into a mirror of muted grays. Lena Moretti shifted her weight from one aching foot to the other, her thin coat doing little to ward off the persistent drizzle. Around her, the busy intersection hummed with life. People rushing home, umbrellas bobbing like black mushrooms against the darkening sky. Her merchandise lay spread before her on a waterproof tarp: plastic bracelets, knockoff watches, and trinkets that caught what little light remained. But it was the bicycle that drew the most attention. Tommy's pride and joy, now propped against the wall behind her. The faded red paint told stories of summer adventures and scraped knees. A frayed ribbon, once bright pink, but now a washed-out rose, fluttered from the handlebar where a bell should have been. "Only $20, Lena called out, her voice steady, despite the gnawing in her stomach. "Good condition, just needs a little love." She refused to let her voice crack or her shoulders slump. 26 years old, and she'd learned that pity made people walk faster, not reach for their wallets. Tommy crouched nearby, sheltered in the doorway of a closed shop. His paper airplane, crafted from yesterday's newspaper, swooped through the humid air. His small face was focused on the task, though Lena caught the occasional glance he cast at the hot dog vendor across the street. The smell of grilled onions made her dizzy. "Baby, stay where I can see you," she called. Tommy nodded, his dark curls bouncing. He was too thin for 6, but his smile never dimmed. That smile was both her courage and her torture. The traffic light changed, bringing another wave of potential customers. Lena straightened, plastering on what she hoped was a confident expression. That's when she saw it. A black sedan that seemed to part the crowd like a shark through water. It pulled up to the curb with the kind of quiet precision that spoke of money and power. The back door opened, and the street seemed to hold its breath. The man who stepped out made Lena's survival instincts crackle. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator. His charcoal suit unmarked by rain, early 40s, with features that might have been carved from marble. Beautiful in the way that ancient statues of warriors were beautiful. Dangerous. His eyes swept the scene, taking in every detail with methodical thoroughness. Lena felt exposed, as if those dark eyes could read the last time she'd eaten, 2 days ago, and the exact amount in her pocket. $3.42. "Buy my bike, sir!" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. Her voice cracked, pride finally splintering under the weight of necessity. "Mommy hasn't eaten in 2 days." She hated herself for the admission, but Tommy's hollow cheeks haunted her more than her dignity. The man, Marcello Cello Romano, though Lena didn't know this yet, studied her face. His silence had weight. Without breaking eye contact, he reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather wallet. The bills he handed over were crisp, as if they'd just left the bank. Far more than she'd asked for the bicycle. His driver appeared with a wrapped sandwich, still warm. Marcello took it and extended it to Lena with the same precise movement. Everything about him was precise, she realized, like a perfectly maintained weapon. "Thank you," Lena managed, her fingers closing around both the money and the sandwich. The paper was slightly damp from the rain, but the warmth beneath made her mouth water. Marcello nodded once, a gesture so slight it might have been imagined. He returned to his car with the same fluid movement, never having said a word. The sedan pulled away from the curb, leaving behind only the lingering scent of expensive leather and something darker, like gunpowder. Lena stood frozen, the money burning in her pocket. The street had resumed its rhythm, but she felt offbeat, as if the world had shifted slightly on its axis. Her eyes darted to the surrounding buildings, the windows above, the alley mouths. She felt watched, marked somehow. "Tommy!" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Time to go home, baby." He bounded over, paper airplane clutched carefully in one hand. "Can we get hot dogs?" "We have something better." She showed him the sandwich, and his eyes lit up. "But we'll eat at home, okay?" They wound their way through narrowing alleys, away from the main streets. The buildings pressed closer here, their walls streaked with rain and old graffiti. Tommy's small hand was warm in hers as they walked, sharing the sandwich in careful, measured bites. "It's good," Tommy declared, licking his fingers. "Like the ones from the fancy shop." Lena nodded, savoring her own portion. It was good. Better than good. The bread was fresh, the meat high quality. Not the kind of sandwich you'd find at corner stores in this neighborhood. The rain had softened to a mist, creating halos around the few working streetlights. Their footsteps echoed off the wet walls, accompanied by Tommy's quiet humming. He didn't seem to notice the bike's absence. Yet. That conversation would come later, along with the guilt she'd pushed down. For now, she focused on getting them home, on the weight of the money in her pocket, on the simple miracle of food in their stomachs. But she couldn't shake the feeling of those dark eyes, the way they'd taken in everything about her situation in seconds. The precise way he'd moved, the silence that had felt like assessment rather than judgment. She quickened their pace slightly, guiding Tommy around a puddle. The alleys grew familiar, almost home. Still, she checked over her shoulder more than usual, scanning the shadows with new wariness. Something had changed in the rain-slicked city today. She just wasn't sure what. The sodium streetlights cast sickly shadows across the empty lane. Lena clutched Tommy's hand tighter, her other hand wrapped around the remains of their sandwich. The money from the bicycle sale felt heavy in her coat pocket, each step echoing off brick walls still wet from the afternoon rain. "Almost home, baby," she whispered, more to comfort herself than Tommy. The lane stretched ahead, bordered by shuttered storefronts and fire escapes that looked like skeletal fingers in the dim light. The footsteps behind them registered first. Quick, purposeful, too close. Before Lena could react, rough hands shoved her forward. She stumbled, instinctively pulling Tommy behind her. "Wallet and food!" a gravelly voice demanded. Two men, local muscle by their swagger, the taller one had a face mapped with old scars. His companion wore a stained hoodie pulled low. "We don't have anything," Lena said, backing away. Her voice stayed steady, even as fear crawled up her spine. The scarred man laughed. "Saw you earlier, sweetheart. Nice stack of bills from that fancy car." His partner lunged forward, grabbing Tommy's arm. The boy yelped in surprise, his paper airplane dropping to the wet pavement. "Let him go!" Lena's scream echoed off the walls. The violence happened so fast it seemed choreographed. Dark figures materialized from doorways and alleys. Men in fitted suits moving with mechanical precision. The first attacker's nose exploded in a spray of red as a fist connected with surgical accuracy. He dropped, clutching his face. The man holding Tommy never saw the blow coming. Something solid, maybe a pistol grip, cracked against his temple. He crumpled like a puppet with cut strings. A gunshot cracked the night air, deliberately high. Brick dust showered from where the bullet struck, inches above the first attacker's head. He froze, blood streaming between his fingers. "Gentlemen." The voice was quiet, cultured. Marcello emerged from a shadowed doorway, his suit still immaculate. He studied the scene with clinical detachment, as if observing an uninteresting experiment. "I believe this concludes tonight's entertainment." Tommy pressed against Lena's leg, silent but trembling. She wrapped her arm around his shoulders, heart hammering. "Miss Moretti." Marcello's attention shifted to her. "My car is waiting. Allow us to ensure your safety." "We're fine," Lena said automatically. "We live close." Distant sirens wailed. The thug's companions would have called it in by now, and questions would follow. Questions she couldn't afford to answer. "The police will be here shortly," Marcello observed. "Your choice, of course. But explaining this scenario might prove complicated." He gestured to a black sedan idling at the curb, engine purring like a content predator. His men had already disappeared, taking the would-be muggers with them. Only spreading pools of blood marked where they'd been. Lena's mind raced. The police meant social services. Questions about Tommy, about their living situation. She couldn't risk it. "If we go with you," she said carefully, "I want terms." Something flickered in Marcello's eyes. Approval, maybe amusement. "Name them." 1 week's pay, up front. For my silence and any work you need done." She lifted her chin. "A furnished room for Tommy, and no questions about my life or circumstances." Acceptable. He didn't haggle or hesitate. "I have a private residence. Secure, well-staffed. You'll be comfortable there." "A week," Lena repeated firmly. "That's all." Marcello's smile was slight, detached. "Of course." He opened the car door himself, stepping back with an elegant gesture. Lena helped Tommy in first, noting the leather seats, the subtle aromatics, the tinted windows that sealed them away from the world. As she slid in after her son, Marcello's hand closed the door with decisive finality. The click of the latch echoed like a vault ceiling shut. Through the window, she watched him walk around to the other side, his movements unhurried and precise. The sirens grew closer, but he showed no concern. When he settled into the seat opposite them, his presence filled the space like smoke. Intangible, but impossible to ignore. Tommy leaned against her, his small body finally relaxing as the car pulled away from the curb. The interior lights caught Marcello's signet ring as his hand rested on his knee, gold and obsidian, marking him as something more than just another wealthy man. The streets began to blur past, taking them deeper into the city's expensive district. Lena kept her spine straight, her face composed. She'd agreed to this arrangement, but on her terms. 1 week. She could handle anything for 1 week. But as they drove, she couldn't shake the memory of how his men had appeared from nowhere, how efficiently they'd moved, how completely they'd controlled the situation. This man commanded that kind of loyalty, that kind of power, without raising his voice or lifting a finger. The car turned onto a tree-lined avenue where wrought iron fences guarded multi-million-dollar townhouses. Tommy pressed his face to the window, eyes wide at the manicured gardens and elaborate architecture. Lena noticed Marcello watching him, his expression unreadable in the passing. Shadows. She'd made a deal with someone dangerous, she knew that. But watching her sons wonder at this glimpse of a different world, feeling the warmth and safety of the car after the violence they'd escaped, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. Not yet. The sedan slowed, approaching a townhouse that managed to be both elegant and fortress-like. As they rolled to a stop, Lena caught Marcello studying her again, his dark eyes measuring something she couldn't name. 1 week, she reminded herself. She could survive anything for 7 days. The townhouse loomed before them, its Georgian facade a stark silhouette against the night sky. Lena shifted Tommy's weight on her shoulder, his warm breath steady against her neck as he slept. Their 2 worn bags, all she'd managed to grab from their apartment, felt impossibly light against the building's gravitas. Marcello led them through a reinforced door that whispered expense in its silent swing. The foyer opened into a space that made Lena's chest tighten. Marble floors stretched like frozen lakes, their polish reflecting security cameras that blinked from discreet corners. The air held notes of lemon polish and old money. "Sophia will show you the premises," Marcello said, gesturing to a woman who materialized from a side hall. Middle-aged, with steel-gray hair, pulled into a neat bun, Sophia carried herself with quiet competence. "This way," Sophia said, her voice carrying neither warmth nor coldness. She led them past a grand staircase that curved up to the darkness of upper floors. The workspace Sophia showed them was a testament to control. Metal shelving gleamed under LED lights, each rack labeled with precise categories. Cleaning supplies, linens, and household necessities stood in military formations. A computer terminal sat ready for inventory. "You'll manage supplies, arrange deliveries, and maintain stock records," Sophia explained, demonstrating the inventory system's login. "Everything must be documented." Lena nodded, noting how the storeroom's single window had elegant but unmistakable bars. They moved through the house like ghosts, their footsteps absorbed by thick carpets. Sophia pointed out boundaries. The study door, solid oak, always locked. The kitchen, access only during designated hours. The garden visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, a manicured paradise under surveillance. Tommy stirred as they reached their assigned room, blinking in the soft light. The space was small but carefully furnished. Twin beds with crisp sheets, a modest dresser, warm beige walls. A bathroom connected through a side door, spotless and supplied with fresh towels. "Your work begins at 8, Marcello said from the doorway, his frame filling it completely. 8-hour shifts, with breaks as needed for your son's care. Sophia will oversee your duties." Lena laid Tommy on one of the beds, tucking him in with practiced movements. "And the garden?" she asked, thinking of Tommy's need to run. "To play. Supervised access, 1 hour daily." Marcello's tone left no room for negotiation. "The study is strictly off limits. The rest of the house is accessible only as your duties require." She turned to face him fully, drawing herself up despite her exhaustion. "Are we prisoners here?" Something flickered in his dark eyes, amusement perhaps, or approval at her directness. "You're free to leave whenever you choose, Miss Moretti." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "But consider tonight's events. The world outside these walls isn't kind to single mothers and small boys." The threat wasn't in his words, but in the space between them, in the way his presence seemed to draw the oxygen from the room. Lena glanced at the window, where ornate ironwork traced patterns across the glass. Protection or prison bars. The difference depended entirely on perspective. Sophia cleared her throat softly. "I'll show you the morning protocols at 7:30, she said. "There's food in the mini fridge if you're hungry." Marcello nodded once, a dismissal and a closing statement. He turned with fluid grace, Sophia following in his wake. The door closed with a soft click that somehow carried the weight of a vault ceiling shut. Lena waited until their footsteps faded before exploring their new cage. The mini fridge held yogurt, fruit, and small sandwiches. The bathroom gleamed with marble and chrome, stocked with high-end toiletries. Every comfort provided, every need anticipated. Tommy mumbled in his sleep, curling around his borrowed pillow. She touched his hair gently, this child who was her whole world, her reason for every desperate choice. Moving to the window, Lena pressed her palm against the cool glass. City lights sparkled beyond the iron scrollwork, beautiful and unreachable. The garden below lay in shadows, its high walls topped with subtle but unmistakable security measures. She'd agreed to this arrangement thinking it was simple. 7 days of work in exchange for safety and silence. But standing here, watching her reflection ghost against the cityscape, she realized her mistake. Nothing about Marcello was simple. His protection came with invisible strings, his generosity with unspoken demands. The room was warm, the bed inviting, but Lena remained at the window. She traced the path they'd taken here, the mugging, the rescue, the smooth car ride through progressively wealthier neighborhoods. Each step had seemed logical, necessary. Only now did she see how each choice had drawn them deeper into Marcello's orbit. 7 days suddenly seemed much longer. 7 days in this beautiful prison, under the watch of a man who commanded violence with a whisper. 7 days during which the outside world would move on without them, their old life dissolving like sugar in rain. Tommy shifted in his sleep, and Lena watched his reflection in the window. He looked peaceful, unburdened by the weight of their situation. To him, this was probably an adventure. A fancy house, a garden to play in, regular meals. He was too young to see the bars, too innocent to understand the price of protection. The city winked at her through the ironwork, a constellation of lights and shadows. Somewhere out there was their cramped apartment, their independence, their struggle, but also their freedom. Here, they were safe but contained, protected but controlled. Lena pressed her forehead against the glass, closing her eyes. The realization settled over her like a heavy blanket. They could leave, yes, but leaving wouldn't free them from Marcello's influence. They'd seen too much, accepted too much. Whether they stayed 7 days or 7 years, they were already caught in his web. The night pressed against the window, and Lena finally stepped away. Tomorrow would come too soon, bringing with it new rules to learn, new boundaries to test. For now, she could only curl up beside Tommy and pretend that the warmth of this room didn't come with a price. She was only beginning to understand. Morning light filtered through the high windows of the storeroom, casting long shadows across stacks of wooden crates and metal filing cabinets. Lena adjusted her cardigan, the room's chill seeping through despite the building's efficient heating. She'd been at it since 7, following Sophia's brisk instructions on cataloging procedures. "Everything needs to be logged properly," Sophia had explained, demonstrating the inventory system. "Mr. Romano is particular about organization." Particular was an understatement. The storeroom was a study in precision, leather-bound ledgers arranged by date, luxury items wrapped in tissue paper, boxes labeled in neat block letters. Lena's fingers traced the spine of a ledger, its leather soft with age. Through the window, she could see Tommy in the enclosed garden, carefully supervised by Sophia. He'd taken to following the housekeeper's elderly gray cat, a creature as quiet and dignified as its surroundings. The cat tolerated Tommy's attention with surprising patience, allowing him to trail behind as it made its morning rounds. A cough echoed from the garden. Lena tensed, but Tommy seemed unbothered, continuing his exploration of a flower bed. The cough had started 2 days ago. Nothing serious, but in their world, every illness carried the weight of potential disaster. She turned back to her task, opening a fresh ledger. A photograph slipped from between its pages, worn at the edges, slightly faded. A younger Marcello stood beside a woman and child, his expression softer than Lena had ever seen it. She quickly tucked it back, but not before noting how time had hardened his features, carved deeper lines around his mouth. The filing cabinet proved more challenging. Most drawers opened smoothly, revealing more perfectly organized documents. But one small drawer remained stubbornly locked. Lena noted it in her inventory list, refusing to let curiosity get the better of her. "Mommy," Tommy's voice carried through the window. "Look at the butterflies!" She smiled, watching him point excitedly at something beyond her view. Sophia sat nearby on a stone bench, her knitting needles clicking steadily as she kept watch. The cat had settled at Tommy's feet, apparently resigned to its role as playmate. The door opened behind her, and the room's atmosphere shifted. Marcello's presence had a weight to it, and gravitational pull that demanded attention. Lena straightened, turning to face him. "Your son is coughing," he said without preamble. "Children cough." She kept her voice neutral. "It's nothing serious." Marcello moved past her to the window, watching Tommy chase a leaf across the garden. "I have an excellent pediatrician on call. We manage fine on our own." "Pride is admirable," he said, his tone dry. "Foolish, but admirable." Lena crossed her arms. "I don't need charity. Consider it an investment in workplace efficiency." His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. "A sick child means a distracted worker. Everything's a transaction with you, isn't it?" A slight smile curved his mouth. "Isn't that why you're here? A week's work in exchange for safety?" Before she could respond, Tommy coughed again. Marcello moved with unexpected swiftness, striding from the storeroom. Lena followed, alarmed, but he was already in the garden, kneeling beside Tommy. His touch was gentle as he pressed the back of his hand to Tommy's forehead, checking for fever. The gesture was so natural, so paternal, that Lena felt her chest tighten. Tommy didn't pull away, accepting the attention with his usual trust. "A slight temperature," Marcello announced, standing. "Nothing serious yet, but it could develop." "He's fine," Lena insisted, but uncertainty crept in. In their old life, a doctor's visit meant hours in free clinics, missed work, empty cupboards. Marcello studied her face. "The doctor comes here. You continue working. Payment deducted from your wages, purely business." She wanted to refuse on principle, but Tommy coughed again, and practicality won out. "Fine, but I decide what treatment he receives." "Of course." That ghost of a smile returned. "You're his mother." The words carried an undercurrent she couldn't quite grasp. Marcello turned to Sophia, giving quiet instructions about the doctor's visit, then left as smoothly as he'd arrived. Tommy returned to playing, the cat still his faithful shadow. Sophia resumed her knitting, but her eyes were sharp, missing nothing. Lena retreated to the storeroom, trying to shake off the strange intimacy of the moment. The morning stretched into afternoon. The doctor came and went, prescribing simple syrup for Tommy's cough. Lena catalogued endless boxes and ledgers, her mind wandering to the locked drawer, the hidden photograph, the gentle press of Marcello's hand against her son's forehead. At lunch, Sophia brought sandwiches, thick bread, real meat, fresh vegetables. Tommy ate with enthusiasm, but Lena noticed him carefully wrapping half his portion in a napkin. Their old habits died hard. Never waste food, never know when the next meal might come. While Sophia cleared the plates, Lena slipped the wrapped bread into Tommy's pocket. Their eyes met in silent understanding. Some lessons couldn't be unlearned in a day. Save what you can, prepare for lean times, trust no comfort to last. The afternoon sun warmed the garden. Tommy dozed on a bench, the cat purring beside him. Lena watched from the storeroom window, her inventory list forgotten. They were safe here, fed and warm, but safety had never come without strings. She remembered Marcello's words. "Pride is admirable, foolish but admirable." Perhaps he was right. Perhaps refusing help was its own kind of foolishness. But pride and independence had kept them alive this long, and she wasn't ready to surrender either, not even for the sake of gentle hands checking fevers and warm rooms with locked drawers full of secrets. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the townhouse's brick facade. Lena clutched Tommy's hand as they walked toward the corner shop, her steps quick but measured. They needed basic supplies, toothpaste, soap, things to maintain dignity in their temporary shelter. "Can I get a candy bar?" Tommy asked, skipping beside her. "We'll see." She smiled, though her eyes scanned the quiet street. Old habits. A man stepped from between parked cars, leather jacket, close-cropped hair, a cheap chain around his neck. His smile wasn't friendly. "Nice kid," he said, falling into step beside them. Shame if anything happened to him. Lena's grip on Tommy's hand tightened. "We don't want trouble." "No trouble." The man's voice was casual, almost bored. "Just a small donation, call it neighborhood tax." "I don't have money." Lena pulled Tommy closer. "Everyone's got something." His hand brushed her arm. "Maybe we can work something." The air changed. Marcello materialized like a shadow given form, his movement liquid and precise. One moment the thug was reaching, the next, he was against the wall, Marcello's hand at his throat. "Tommy," Lena whispered, "close your eyes." What happened next was mechanical, emotionless. A knife appeared in Marcello's hand, silver flash, red bloom. The thug made a wet sound, then silence. Marcello stepped back, straightening his cuffs. The body slumped, a crumpled puppet. Two men emerged from a nearby doorway, efficient as undertakers, and began cleaning up. "Inside," Marcello said quietly. "Now." Lena's legs shook as she guided Tommy back to the townhouse. The boy's eyes were still closed, trusting her completely. She wanted to vomit. In the living room, Tommy curled up with Sophia's cat while the housekeeper brought tea. Lena's hands trembled so badly she couldn't hold the cup. "Why was that man hurt?" Tommy asked suddenly. "He?" Lena's voice cracked. "He was a bad man," Marcello said from the doorway. "He won't bother anyone again." Tommy accepted this with a child's simple logic and returned to petting the cat. Lena couldn't stop shaking. Marcello sat in an armchair, his presence both threatening and oddly reassuring. His hands, clean now, but she knew what they'd done, rested on his knees. "I'm sorry you saw that," he said finally. His voice was rough, almost gentle. Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "You killed him, just killed him." "Yes." No excuse, no justification. "I can't." She stood abruptly. "We can't stay here. This isn't. You can't leave." Marcello's tone was final. "The streets aren't safe. Because of you?" she demanded. "Your enemies?" "Partially." He met her gaze. "But also because that man wasn't working alone. There are others." Lena collapsed back onto the sofa, the fight draining from her. "I won't be owned. I won't be kept." "No one owns you." Marcello leaned forward. "But I will protect what's mine. We're not yours." "You're under my roof." His eyes flickered to Tommy. "That makes you my responsibility." "I can pay my way," Lena insisted. "I won't be in your debt." "Your pride will get you killed." For the first time, anger edged his voice. Or worse, it will get him killed. The words hit like physical blows. Lena looked at Tommy, innocent and oblivious, still playing with the cat. Marcello's expression softened marginally. "A compromise, then. I'll cover Tommy's needs. Food, medicine, safety. You keep your independence within these walls, work as agreed, but you don't leave until I say it's clear." "That's not independence," Lena whispered. "That's a cage. A cage keeps dangers out as much as it keeps things in." He stood. "Choose, Lena, pride or survival." She knew then, really knew, that leaving would only make things worse. The streets had eyes now, watching for weakness. They were safer here, under his protection, even if that protection came with teeth. Night fell. Tommy dozed in her arms as she sat in the window seat, nursing his lingering cough with honey tea. Down the hallway, Marcello's silhouette cut a sharp line in the lamplight. Predator and protector, killer and keeper. She thought of the thug's last breath, of Marcello's clean efficiency, of Tommy's innocent questions. The world outside was cruel, but here was a different kind of danger. A danger that killed for them, that checked fevers with gentle hands, that offered safety wrapped in silk-lined steel. Lena pressed her lips to Tommy's forehead, breathing in his childhood scent. Tomorrow she would work, catalog boxes, maintain the illusion of normalcy. But tonight she watched Marcello's shadow and wondered what price they would ultimately pay for his protection. Morning light filtered through the storeroom's high windows, casting long shadows across the shelves. Lena's fingers traced the spine of another leather ledger, adding it to her growing inventory list. The work was methodical, almost peaceful, a welcome distraction from yesterday's violence. She reached for an ornate cigar box tucked behind a row of files. The wood was smooth with age, its brass hinges tarnished. Inside, beneath the lingering scent of tobacco, lay a photograph. The edges were soft, worn from handling. A younger Marcello, maybe 16, stood beside a woman with kind eyes and a small boy. They were smiling, caught in a moment of genuine joy. "My mother and brother," Lena startled. Marcello stood in the doorway, his usual mask slipped just slightly. "I didn't mean to pry," she said, closing the box. "You're meant to inventory everything." He crossed the room, took the photograph. "Even ghosts." Something in his voice made her pause. "What happened to them?" "Family business." His jaw tightened. My father's partner decided he wanted more control, arranged an accident. He unfolded a letter from beneath the photo, creased and yellowed. This warned us. Came too late. Lena's chest tightened. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, but his fingers lingered on the paper. My Tommy's father. Lena surprised herself by speaking. He got mixed up with dangerous people. Loan sharks, maybe worse. One day, he just vanished. She wrapped her arms around herself. They never found a body. Marcello studied her face. You loved him? I loved who I thought he was. She met his gaze. Before the lying, the debts, the violence. Understanding passed between them, the weight of betrayal, of trust broken beyond repair. Tommy doesn't remember him, she continued. Sometimes I think that's better. Children shouldn't carry their parents' sins. Marcello's voice was rough. They stood close now, the cigar box between them. Lena reached for another ledger, just as Marcello moved to help. Their hands brushed, a spark of contact that sent electricity up her arm. For a moment, neither moved. The air grew thick with unspoken possibility. Lena stepped back first. This arrangement, she said carefully, it's about protection. Nothing more. Of course. His smile was small, private, almost appreciative of her directness. I won't be owned, she added. Not by anyone. Noted. He inclined his head slightly. Though ownership isn't what interests me. The implications in those words made her pulse jump. She turned back to the shelves, needing distance. From the garden, Tommy's laughter drifted in. He was playing with Sophia's cat again, safe in his childhood bubble. He's a good boy, Marcello observed. Strong spirit. Like his mother, a new voice cut in. Lena turned. A man stood in the doorway. Sharp features, expensive suit. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Enzo, Marcello acknowledged. You're early. Just checking our new guest is settling in. Enzo's gaze swept over Lena, calculating. The storeroom suits you. Something in his tone made her spine stiffen. It's honest work. Indeed. His smile widened fractionally, though some might question the wisdom of bringing strangers so close to home. Some might do better minding their own business, Marcello replied mildly. But there was steel beneath the words. Enzo inclined his head, properly chastised, but his eyes held something darker. He left without another word. The rest of the day passed in careful routine. Lena cataloged boxes, Tommy played under Sophia's watchful eye, and Marcello appeared occasionally to check progress or bring water. Evening found them in the living room, Tommy drowsy from dinner. Marcello paused in the doorway, holding a worn copy of The Little Prince. May I? He asked quietly. Lena hesitated. This was intimate, a father's role, a tender moment. But Tommy was already reaching for the book, eyes bright with interest. She nodded slowly. Trust, like morning frost, crystallizing carefully. Marcello sat in the armchair. Tommy curled beside him. His voice, usually sharp with command, softened as he read. Once when I was 6 years old. Lena watched them, this unlikely pair, her innocent son and the dangerous man who killed to protect them. The contradiction ached somewhere beneath her ribs. Tommy's eyes grew heavy as Marcello turned pages, his small hand clutching the edge of the man's expensive jacket. The scene was domestic, almost normal if you ignored the gun Lena knew was holstered beneath Marcello's arm. In the hallway, a shadow moved, Enzo again, watching. His presence felt like ice down her spine. But Marcello kept reading, his free hand absently smoothing Tommy's hair. And for now, this strange peace held. When Tommy finally dozed off, Marcello closed the book with careful quietness. He fights sleep like a warrior, he murmured. Always has. Lena smiled despite herself. Thank you, for the story. He stood, adjusting his jacket. Books were rare, in my childhood. Stories even rarer. A pause. Tommy deserves better. The words hung between them, another small piece of his past offered up like trust. Lena gathered Tommy into her arms, his warm weight familiar and precious. Good night, Mr. Romano. Marcello, he corrected softly. When it's just us. She nodded, not quite agreeing, but not refusing either. They had shared too much today for formality, too little for familiarity. As she carried Tommy to their room, she felt Marcello's gaze follow them. Not possessive, not yet, but aware, always aware. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the townhouse garden when the guard's voice crackled over the intercom. Miss Moretti, someone's here claiming to be your brother. Lena's hands stilled over the ledger she was organizing. Brother? She hadn't seen Mateo in years, not since… Says it's urgent, ma'am. She hurried to the gate, Tommy trailing behind her with his paper airplane. Through the iron bars, she saw him. Mateo, thinner than she remembered, sporting a fresh bruise under his left eye. Lena! He wheezed, gripping the bars. Thank God. I've been looking everywhere. Mateo? She stepped closer, studying his face. Same dark eyes as their father, but hollowed now. What happened to you? Got into trouble. Bad people. He glanced nervously over his shoulder. I just need help. Alone. I'll pay it back, I swear. Tommy peered around her legs. Who's that, Mommy? Your Uncle Mateo, she said softly, though the word felt strange. Family was complicated, messy and unreliable, but still family. Please, Lena. Mateo's voice cracked. I haven't eaten in days. She remembered hunger, remembered the desperation that drove people to terrible choices. Wait here. In the kitchen, she packed leftover bread, cheese, and cold chicken into a paper bag. Sophia watched silently, disapproval clear in her tight lips. Just food, Lena explained. He's family. Family can hurt worst of all, Sophia muttered, but didn't stop her. Back at the gate, Mateo devoured the food like a starving man. They're after me, he said between bites. I need money to get out of town. Who's after you? Bad people, loan sharks. He wiped his mouth. Just enough for a bus ticket, please. Lena's chest tightened. She had some savings now from Marcello's wages. I can help a little, but you have to go right after… Thank you, thank you. He grabbed her hand through the bars. Can we talk inside? It's not safe out here. She hesitated. Marcello's rules were clear, no visitors. But this was Mateo. Blood of her blood. And he looked so desperate. 10 minutes, she decided. Through the side gate, quick! She led him to the garden shed, away from the main house. Tommy stayed by the flowers, playing with his plane. How did you find me? She asked. Asked around, heard you were staying with some rich guy. Mateo's eyes darted around the garden. Nice setup you got here. Something in his tone made her uneasy. It's temporary. Just work. They talked for 20 minutes. Mateo spinning tales of bad luck and worse choices, Lena listening with growing doubt. When she gave him the money, his hands shook. Get somewhere safe, she told him, and Mateo, don't come back here. He nodded, but his smile was wrong somehow. Too quick, too practiced. That night, after Tommy was asleep, she heard voices from Marcello's study, angry voices. Playing me for a fool? Marcello's tone was arctic. No, sir, I swear. Mateo's voice, terrified now. Who sent you? Enzo? Lena's blood froze. She crept closer to the door. He said it was just intelligence gathering about the girl. A sharp sound, flesh hitting wood. 3 days watching my house, using my hospitality against me. Marcello's voice dropped lower. Using her. Lena pushed the door open. Mateo was pinned against the desk, Marcello's hand at his throat. What's going on? She demanded. Marcello didn't release his grip. Tell her who you really work for. Lena, Mateo choked. He's not your brother, Marcello said flatly. He's a paid informant, working for someone who wants to hurt us both. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You knew? You knew he wasn't… I recognized him days ago. He's been watching the house. And you didn't tell me. Anger rose hot in her throat. You let me believe I was protecting you. By lying? She advanced into the room. By letting me make a fool of myself? By controlling a threat? The way you control everything. Her voice cracked. Is that what I am? Just another thing to control. Something flickered in Marcello's eyes. Hurt, maybe. He released Mateo, who slumped gasping. Get out, he told the imposter. If I see you again, you won't walk away. Mateo scrambled for the door. Lena barely noticed, fury burning through her veins. 3 days, she said when they were alone. 3 days I've trusted you, let you near my son. Everything I've done has been to keep you safe. By deciding what I get to know, what I get to choose. The less you knew, the safer you were. That's not your decision to make. She was shouting now, tears hot in her eyes. I'm not one of your possessions, Marcello. I'm not something you get to manage and control. Lena! He reached for her. She jerked away. Don't. Just don't. The hurt in his face was raw now, unguarded. I never meant to. To what? Use me like everyone else? She backed toward the door. I was starting to think you were different. I am different. His voice was rough. With you, I'm... Save it. She turned away, unable to look at him. I trusted you. That was my mistake. She slammed the door behind her, tears finally spilling over. In their small room, Tommy slept peacefully, unaware of the betrayals spinning around him. Lena sat on the edge of the bed, watching her son breathe. Morning would come soon. Morning meant choices: stay and accept Marcello's protection with all its strings, or leave and face whatever dangers waited outside. She touched Tommy's hair, soft and dark against the pillow. 3 days ago, she'd thought she was choosing safety. Now she wasn't sure what she'd chosen at all. Sunlight crept through the threadbare curtains, finding Lena already awake, her small bag packed. She'd barely slept, Matteo's betrayal and Marcello's deception churning in her mind all night. Tommy stirred on the narrow bed. Mommy, are we going somewhere? Just to the market, baby. She forced a smile. We need some fresh air. She'd made her decision at dawn. They wouldn't leave permanently, not yet, but she needed to test the boundaries of their supposed freedom. Marcello's protection felt more like a cage after last night. Sophia appeared in the doorway as they prepared to leave, her eyes worried. Miss Lena, perhaps I could accompany you. We'll be fine. Lena's voice was firm. 2 blocks to the market and back before dark. We're not prisoners here, right? Sophia's silence spoke volumes. The morning air was crisp, Tommy's hand warm in hers as they walked. The street seemed normal enough. Vendors setting up, stalls, old women sweeping storefronts, the smell of fresh bread from the corner bakery. Can we get a pastry? Tommy pointed at the display window. Maybe on the way back. Lena's eyes scanned the street. Nothing suspicious, just ordinary people going about their day. They made it 1 block before she noticed the first tail, a man in a leather jacket trying too hard to look casual. Half a block later, another one appeared, phone to his ear. Lena's heart rate picked up. She turned them around, but more men were closing in from behind. Tommy, baby, we need to run. The van appeared from nowhere, sliding to a stop beside them. Everything happened in brutal seconds. Hands grabbing her waist, a cloth pressed to her face, Tommy's scream. Mommy! Through blurring vision, she saw Sophia materialize from the crowd, scooping Tommy up and running back toward the townhouse. At least he was safe. Then chemical darkness took her. She woke to cold concrete and the smell of rust. Her head throbbed, wrists bound behind her back. The warehouse was vast, shadows stretching between metal support beams. Finally awake. A man stepped into view, expensive suit, cruel smile. She recognized him from the townhouse. Enzo. What do you want? Her voice was hoarse. Just sending a message to our mutual friend. He circled her chair. Marcello's gotten soft since you arrived. Distracted. Some of us think it's time for new leadership. I'm nothing to him. The lie tasted bitter. We both know that's not true. Enzo's fingers traced her cheek. She jerked away. He's been different since you came. Careful, protective. It's quite touching, really. A phone rang somewhere in the shadows. Enzo answered, his face hardening. Yes, she's alive. No permanent damage. Yet. He hung up. Marcello sends his regards. He's quite upset. Hours passed in tense silence. Lena tested her bonds, counted support beams, tried to stay calm. They hadn't hurt her beyond the initial roughing up, but Enzo's casual cruelty promised violence to come. The rescue, when it came, was devastating in its efficiency. First, the power died, plunging the warehouse into darkness. Then came the sounds, glass breaking, boots on concrete, controlled bursts of gunfire. Find her! Marcello's voice echoed through the space, raw with fury. Now! Flashlight beams cut through the darkness. Enzo melted away into the shadows as Marcello's men swept the warehouse. Lena heard bodies falling, sharp cries of pain, the wet sounds of revenge. Here, someone called out. Boss, we found her! Marcello appeared in the beam of light, his face a mask of cold rage. He cut her bonds himself, hands gentle despite his fury. Are you hurt? His fingers probed for injuries. I'm okay, she was shaking. Tommy, safe with Sophia, no one touched him. Relief made her knees weak. Marcello caught her as she stumbled, lifting her easily. Enzo? He asked his men. Gone, sir, but we found 3 of his lieutenants. Good. His voice promised retribution. Make them talk. He carried her past the aftermath of violence, bodies on the floor, blood on the walls. His men moved with practiced efficiency, erasing evidence of their presence. The car waited outside, engine running. Marcello placed her in the back seat like she was made of glass, then slid in beside her. "Take us home," he ordered the driver. Lena's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "I shouldn't have left." "No." His voice was tight. "But I shouldn't have lied about Matteo. We both made mistakes." They rode in silence until they reached the townhouse. Inside his study, Marcello's control finally cracked. His fist went through the antique table like it was paper. "I'll kill him," he growled. "Enzo, Matteo, anyone who touched you." "Marcello." She touched his arm. The muscle was rigid under her fingers. "He used you to get to me." Self-loathing roughened his voice. "Because I was weak enough to care." "Is that what this is? Weakness?" He turned to her, eyes dark with something beyond anger. "You know it's more than that." Before she could respond, Sophia appeared with Tommy. He launched himself at Lena, crying, "Mommy, the bad men are gone," she soothed, holding him close. "We're safe now." Over Tommy's head, she met Marcello's gaze. The rage there had softened to something more dangerous. Possession, protection, promise. "Yes," he said quietly. "You are." A day after the warehouse, tension hummed through the townhouse like a live wire. Lena's bruises had darkened to purple, each one a reminder of how quickly safety could shatter. She worked methodically in the storeroom, trying to lose herself in the routine of cataloging. The door clicked shut behind her. "Marcello." "You should rest," he said. "I've rested enough." She didn't turn around. "Tommy's with Sophia in the garden. I need to work." His footsteps crossed the room, measured, careful. "Lena." She faced him then, breath catching at his proximity. The usually pristine suit was rumpled, his tie loosened. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You haven't slept either," she observed. "No." His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek without touching. "Every time I close my eyes, I see you in that warehouse." The space between them crackled with unspoken words. Lena stepped closer, breaking first. "I keep seeing Tommy's face when they grabbed me." Her voice cracked. "He was so scared. I won't let anyone hurt either of you again. Don't make promises you can't keep." His fingers finally brushed her cheek. "I keep my promises, Lena." She leaned into his touch, walls crumbling. "I'm tired of being afraid." The kiss was inevitable, months of tension dissolving in a heartbeat. His lips were soft despite their urgency, hands cradling her face like she might break. She pressed closer, fingers curling in his shirt. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her mouth. "No." She met his gaze. "But I set the pace." He nodded, control evident in every line of his body. She led him to the small couch in the corner, pushing him down. When she straddled his lap, his hand settled carefully on her hips. "You're sure?" he asked. "Yes." She started on his buttons. "But this doesn't mean I trust you completely." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I wouldn't expect you to." Clothes fell away slowly, each touch deliberate. He explored her body with reverent patience, responding instantly when she guided his hands. When she finally sank onto him, his groan was almost pained. "Lena!" Her name was a prayer. She set a gentle rhythm, his restraint obvious in the tension of his muscles. When she faltered, he supported her weight, letting her control the pace. The tenderness in his eyes almost undid her. "I'm scared," she confessed, hips still moving. "Not of you. Of losing Tommy. Of never being truly safe." He kissed her throat. "I'm scared too. Of being alone again. Of failing you both." The admission pushed her over the edge. He followed, face buried in her neck, hands trembling on her skin. Afterward, he held her close, neither speaking. The intimacy felt more dangerous than the sex. This quiet vulnerability that stripped away their defenses. "This changes things," she finally said. "Yes." His fingers traced her spine. "But not your freedom. You still make your own choices." She dressed slowly, mind already turning to the locked drawer she'd noticed days ago. While Marcello showered, she slipped back to the storeroom, using a pin to work the lock. Inside was a single leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with names and numbers. She flipped through until a familiar surname stopped her heart. Romano. The same name as the man who'd driven her neighborhood into poverty years ago, forcing families like hers into desperate choices. The connection hit like a physical blow. Was Marcello involved? Had his organization been behind the destruction of her community? She heard footsteps approaching and quickly hid the ledger under her shirt. In her room, she stuffed it under her pillow just as Tommy bounded in from the garden. "Mommy, Sophia's cat had babies!" She hugged him tight, guilt and fear warring in her chest. "That's wonderful, baby. Time for bed, though." Later, with Tommy curled against her side, Lena stared at the ceiling, the ledger pressed against her neck like an accusation. The man who'd signed those development contracts years ago, had he been working for Marcello? Had today's intimacy been genuine, or was she just another pawn in his games? Tommy shifted in his sleep, small hand clutching her nightshirt. She'd traded her body for safety today, willingly. But had she also betrayed everything she'd fought to protect? The night stretched endless before her, full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. Her fingers traced the ledger's spine beneath the pillow, as somewhere in the townhouse, a clock struck midnight. In the darkness, she could almost hear her mother's voice. "Trust your gut, girl. Men lie, but paper tells truths." The truth was there, hidden in columns of numbers and carefully printed names. Tomorrow she would dig deeper, find the connection. But tonight she held her sleeping son and tried not to think about how Marcello's hands had felt on her skin, or how his vulnerability had matched her own. Trust, once broken, was harder to rebuild than to maintain. She'd learned that lesson young. The ledger under her pillow was a reminder. In this world of shadows and secrets, nothing was ever simple. Tommy mumbled in his sleep, burrowing closer. She kissed his forehead, breathing in his innocent scent. Whatever truth the ledger held, whatever game Marcello was playing, she would protect her son, even if it meant protecting him from the man who'd shown such tenderness just hours before. The night ticked on, each moment an eternity of doubt. Down the hall, she heard Marcello's study door open and close, his footsteps passing her room. He paused briefly outside her door, then continued on. Lena closed her eyes, but sleep remained elusive. The ledger's secrets burned against her skin, a physical reminder of how quickly paradise could become prison, how easily trust could turn to betrayal. In the garden, Sophia's cat yowled to her new kittens. The sound carried through the night air like a warning. Morning light filtered through the townhouse windows, casting long shadows across the marble floors. Lena's hands trembled as she held the leather-bound ledger standing in Marcello's study. 2 days of recovery had given her time to examine every damning detail within its pages. "Explain this." Her voice cracked. She opened to a marked page, pointing to the name that had haunted her neighborhood for years. Romano Development Corporation, the same company that forced families out of their homes. Marcello sat behind his desk, shoulders tense. His usual mask of control slipped slightly. "It's an old account book. Business transactions, political donations, names of clients who moved through our territory." "Our territory?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "My son and I lived in that territory when Romano Corp destroyed everything. People lost their homes, their savings. My mother." She stopped, throat tight. "I never knew the specifics of their intentions toward your family," Marcello said quietly. "Yes, I did business with men who harmed communities. It was years ago, before I understood the full scope of their actions." "You understood enough to keep records." Lena slammed the ledger down. "Every number here represents someone's life torn apart." Marcello stood, moving around the desk. "I can't change the past, but I can make amends now." "How? By offering protection that comes with strings? By—" A sharp knock interrupted them. Sophia appeared in the doorway, face tight with concern. "Detective Ingram is here. She's asking questions about the warehouse incident." Lena's heart stuttered. Marcello's expression hardened as he gestured for Lena to sit. "Show her in!" Detective Arya Ingram entered like a crack of lightning, precise, professional, and crackling with contained energy. Her suit was immaculate, her badge gleaming at her hip. She took in the room's tension with sharp eyes. "Mr. Romano, Ms. Moretti." Her voice was cool but not unkind. "I'm investigating reports of violence in the warehouse district. Multiple witnesses placed both of you at the scene." "I have no comment," Marcello said flatly. Arya turned to Lena, her expression softening slightly. "Ms. Moretti, I understand your position is complicated. I'd like to offer you an alternative. The district attorney is prepared to grant you full immunity in exchange for your testimony about what happened that day." Lena's fingers curled into fists. "Testimony against whom?" "Anyone involved in organized criminal activities, including Mr. Romano." Arya's eyes flickered to the ledger on the desk. We can provide witness protection for you and your son. The offer hung in the air like smoke. Lena thought of Tommy, of safety purchased with betrayal. She thought of Marcello's hands, gentle despite their capacity for violence. No. The word came out firm. I have nothing to say to the police. Arya studied her for a long moment. Consider carefully, Miss Moretti. Some choices can't be unmade. I've made my choice. The detective nodded, reaching into her jacket. She placed a card on the desk. If you change your mind. Her gaze swept the room once more before she left, heels clicking on marble. Silence stretched between Lena and Marcello. Finally, he spoke. You could have taken her offer. Safety, legitimacy. At what cost? Lena's voice was tired. Trading one cage for another? Across town, in a private club thick with cigar smoke, Enzo Valeri watched Isabel Romano nurse a drink. Marcello's estranged sister had grown thin, her once proud shoulders hunched with unnamed burdens. She flinched when he slid into the seat across from her. Your brother's weakness for the woman and her brat is destroying everything we built, Enzo said smoothly. Help me correct his course, and I'll ensure you're protected when things change. Isabel's hand shook as she lifted her glass. What kind of help? Information. Access. Your brother trusts you, despite everything. Enzo's smile was cruel. Choose carefully, Isabel. Your comfort depends on backing the right horse. Back at the townhouse, Lena stood at the window, watching Tommy play in the garden. The detective's card burned in her pocket like a key to another life. Marcello approached slowly. I meant what I said, about making amends. Words are easy, Lena replied. Actions matter. Then let me act. He moved closer, not touching her. Tell me how to make this right. She turned to face him. Start by explaining everything in that ledger, every name, every connection, no more secrets. It could take days. I have time. She gestured to the garden where Tommy chased Sophia's cat. We both do. Marcello nodded slowly. Tonight then, after Tommy sleeps. The afternoon sun slanted lower, painting the townhouse in amber light. In the garden, Tommy's laughter floated up like bubbles, innocent and pure. Lena touched the window glass, cool against her palm. Behind her, Marcello began pulling more ledgers from his desk. The past would unspool between them tonight, ugly and complicated. But for now, she watched her son play in the fading light, caught between truth and consequence, between love and justice, between the woman she'd been and the one she was becoming. The evening news blazed across every screen in the city. A woman's body, discovered in broad daylight outside her apartment. Elena Martinez, 42, single mother, part-time bakery worker. The same Elena who had slipped Lena fresh bread and watched Tommy when Lena needed 5 minutes to breathe. Lena's hands trembled as she watched the broadcast from the townhouse kitchen. The reporter's voice droned on about execution style and mob connections. But all she could see was Elena's kind smile, hear her gentle laugh when Tommy would beg for cookie samples. Turn it off, Marcello commanded, but the damage was done. Detective Arya Ingram's face filled the screen. We have evidence linking this murder directly to organized crime, specifically to orders from high-ranking members of the Romano organization. The remote slipped from Lena's fingers, clattering on the marble floor. Marcello's jaw clenched as his phone buzzed incessantly. Allies pulling back, questioning loyalty, demanding explanations. I didn't order this, he said quietly, his eyes locked on Lena. You have to believe me. But the evidence said otherwise. Detective Arya had found handwritten instructions, Marcello's distinctive signature, detailed plans for Elena's execution. The forgery was masterful. Enzo had studied his boss's handwriting for years. In his office across town, Enzo watched the chaos unfold with satisfaction. His puppet pieces were falling perfectly into place. The woman's death was regrettable but necessary, a strategic sacrifice to destabilize Marcello's control. Back at the townhouse, Lena moved through the rooms like a ghost. Every surface held memories of Elena's kindness, the cookie tin she'd given Tommy for Christmas, the hand-knitted scarf she'd pressed into Lena's hands on a cold morning, all tainted now by violence. We can fix this, Marcello insisted, following Lena upstairs. I'll find who did this. I'll make it right. Make it right? Lena's voice cracked. Elena is dead. Her children are orphans. There's no making that right. In their bedroom, she pulled out a small suitcase with shaking hands. Tommy's clothes went in first, his favorite dinosaur pajamas, the worn teddy bear, clean socks. Her own things followed. Practical items, nothing fancy. The diamonds Marcello had given her stayed on the dresser. "Don't do this," Marcello said, watching her pack. His hands flexed at his sides, unused to feeling helpless. "Let me protect you?" "Protect us?" Lena's laugh was bitter. "Like you protected Elena? Like you protect the city?" She zipped the suitcase closed. "Your protection comes with blood." Tommy slept peacefully in his room, unaware of the storm brewing. Lena gathered him gently, wrapping him in his favorite blanket. He stirred but didn't wake, trusting completely in his mother's arms. Marcello stood in the doorway, a dark silhouette against the hall light. "The streets aren't safe! Enzo's men, nowhere is safe anymore." Lena's voice was steel. "At least out there, I'm not pretending the danger is love." His phone buzzed again. More crisis calls, more alliances crumbling. The empire he'd built was fracturing, and the woman he'd grown to love was slipping away with each passing second. Sophia appeared with car keys. "The back gate is clear," she whispered. Even the housekeeper understood. Sometimes safety meant running. Lena shouldered the bag, adjusted Tommy's weight. "Don't follow us," she warned Marcello. "Don't send your men. Just let us go." The security cameras tracked their progress through the garden. Marcello watched on the monitors, his hands clenched into fists as Lena disappeared into the shadows with Tommy. His chest ached with an unfamiliar pain. Loss, perhaps, or something deeper. In his office, Enzo received confirmation that Lena had left the townhouse. Phase 1 complete. The woman's death had achieved its purpose, driving a wedge between Marcello and his newfound weakness. Phase 2 would begin soon. Detective Aria sat at her desk, studying crime scene photos. Elena's death was too messy, too public for Marcello's usual precision. Something felt wrong, but the evidence was compelling. She fingered the forged orders, wondering what pieces she wasn't seeing. The city hummed with tension as midnight approached. In back alleys and private clubs, whispers spread about Marcello's crumbling control. Loyal soldiers watched shadows, fingers on triggers, waiting for the power shift they could smell coming. And somewhere in the darkness, Lena walked away from the man who had offered her everything, carrying her sleeping son and the weight of impossible choices. Her feet knew these streets. She'd survived them before. She'd survive them again. Behind her, Marcello's townhouse grew smaller, its windows gleaming like eyes in the night. She didn't look back. Couldn't look back. The night swallowed them whole, mother and child, leaving only footprints in the wet pavement and the echo of what might have been. Inside his study, Marcello stood at the window, watching the spot where Lena had vanished. His empire trembled around him, alliances cracking like ice in spring. But for the first time in his life, the power he'd built meant nothing compared to the absence of a woman's touch and a child's laughter. The night stretched endless before him, full of shadows and betrayal. His phone buzzed again, another crisis, another fracture in his carefully constructed world. But his eyes remained fixed on the darkness that had claimed the only light he'd ever truly wanted to keep. Dawn crept over the city, painting puddles pink with morning light. Marcello hadn't slept. His office bore the scars of rage, shattered glass, splintered wood, papers scattered like fallen leaves. The security feeds played on loop. Lena walking away, Tommy in her arms, disappearing into darkness. He studied the phone records spread across his desk. Enzo's digital footprints formed a pattern. Calls to burner phones, meetings in dead zones, money moving through shadow accounts. The evidence mounted hour by hour, each piece fitting into place like a bullet in a chamber. "Find them," he ordered his tech specialist. "Every camera, every transaction, every whisper, but maintain distance, no direct contact." The specialist nodded, fingers flying over keyboards. Street cameras tracked Lena's path until she vanished near the industrial district. Smart girl, she knew how to disappear. At the abandoned warehouse, Enzo waited with his inner circle. 6 men, all implicated in Elena's murder, all expendable. Marcello entered alone, hands empty, face carved from stone. "Bold move," Enzo smiled, "coming without backup." "You mistake confidence for boldness," Marcello's voice was winter itself. "Elena's death, sloppy work, amateur hour." "Had to send a message," Enzo shrugged. "Your woman needed convincing." The first shot came from shadows. Marcello's sniper, positioned hours earlier. One of Enzo's men dropped. The second followed before the echo faded. Precision, economy of motion. "You forget," Marcello advanced. "I built this empire. I know every shadow, every angle, every weakness." 3 more shots. 3 more bodies. The remaining guard threw down his weapon, choosing survival over loyalty. Enzo's smile cracked. Kill me, you lose everything. The families won't. The families understand necessity. Marcello's gun appeared like magic. But you never understood the difference between power and control. The shot echoed. Enzo fell. No dramatic last words, no final curses, just the wet sound of ending. Across town, Lena sat in a hard chair, watching Tommy sleep in the motel's narrow bed. The room smelled of old cigarettes and cheaper cleaning supplies. She'd pushed the dresser against the door, hung a towel over the window. Basic precautions learned in harder times. Tommy stirred. Mommy, when can we go home? Soon, baby. She smoothed his hair. We're having an adventure, remember? The motel room was bare, peeling wallpaper, a TV that only showed static, water stains on the ceiling. But it was anonymous, safe for now. A soft knock at the door made her freeze. Mrs. Moretti, Sophia's gentle voice. I brought supplies. Lena cracked the door, chain still latched. Sophia stood alone, holding bags of groceries and an envelope. He sends money, and his word. Enzo is handled. His word isn't enough anymore. Lena accepted the groceries, but left the envelope. Tell him I need more than promises. Sophia's eyes softened. He's different without you. Lost. He was lost before me. Lena closed the door gently. That's not my burden to fix. Detective Arya sat in her unmarked car, photographing the warehouse aftermath. Bodies removed, blood washed away, but violence left traces for those who knew where to look. She'd followed the breadcrumbs. Elena's murder didn't match Marcello's methodology. Someone had wanted chaos. Her phone buzzed. Forensics confirmed the forged orders were planted. Elena's death was a power play, not a sanctioned hit. The pieces shifted, forming a new picture. Rain fell again as night approached. Marcello stood across from the motel, water soaking his expensive suit. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see Lena reading to Tommy. Their faces glowed in lamplight, so close yet unreachable. His phone vibrated. More crisis management needed, more fires to extinguish. The Empire demanded attention. But for these stolen moments, he stood in the rain, watching the only thing that mattered slip through his fingers like smoke. Tommy laughed at something Lena said. The sound carried faintly through the glass. Marcello's hands ached to open that door, to explain, to fix everything. But his presence would only bring danger. The street held too many eyes, too many enemies waiting to exploit weakness. A car turned the corner. Detective Arya's unmarked sedan. She'd traced the threads too, following violence to its source. Marcello melted into shadows before she spotted him. His vigil would have to wait. Inside the motel, Lena tucked Tommy into bed. She counted their remaining cash, planned tomorrow's movements, checked the windows again. Survival was a familiar dance. One step at a time, always alert, always ready to run. I miss Marcello, Tommy whispered into his pillow. Lena stroked his cheek. I know, baby. I know. The rain drummed steadily, washing away blood and secrets, while the city held its breath, waiting to see if love could survive in the spaces between power and redemption. Sophia drove back to the townhouse, the rejected envelope heavy in her pocket. She understood both sides. Marcello's desperate need to protect, Lena's fiercer need for truth. Some bridges could only be rebuilt with time and proof. The night settled deeper. In the warehouse district, Marcello's men cleaned away evidence of judgment rendered. In her office, Detective Arya pieced together a puzzle of betrayal and consequence. And in a small motel room, a mother kept watch while her son dreamed of better days. 2 black SUVs pulled into the warehouse district. Marcello stood before his assembled lieutenants, his expression carved from stone. The morning light cast long shadows across wooden crates filled with contraband. The gambling dens in the East District close today. His voice carried absolute authority. The protection rackets end. Any business that hurts civilians, shut it down. Murmurs rippled through the ranks. These operations represented millions in revenue. Boss, Marco, his most trusted lieutenant, stepped forward. The families won't. The families will adapt. Marcello's tone brooked no argument. You'll oversee the transition, keep our legitimate businesses running, but nothing that bleeds the neighborhoods dry. The lieutenants exchanged glances, calculating losses and opportunities, but none dared challenge him. They'd seen what happened to Enzo's people. Across town, Isabel Romano sat in Detective Arya's office, her hands trembling around a coffee cup. Papers spread across the desk, bank statements, phone records, photographs proving Enzo's betrayal. He threatened my daughter, Isabel's voice cracked. Said he'd hurt her if I didn't help frame Marcello for Elena's murder. Aria recorded everything, her face professionally neutral. And the evidence? Isabel pulled a USB drive from her purse. Everything's here. The forged orders, the money trails. Enzo planned it all. In the cheap motel room, Lena packed Tommy's few belongings while he slept. The past 2 days had been a blur of movement, different rooms, different names, always watching their backs. A knock at the door, Detective Aria, again, 3rd time this week. Mrs. Moretti. Aria's tone was gentle but firm. You're running out of options. Witness protection could give Tommy a normal life. Lena's laugh was bitter. Normal? Living in fear, changing names every few months? That's not stability. And this is? Aria gestured at the shabby room. At least it's honest. Lena straightened her spine. I won't trade Tommy's father figure for a prosecutor's deal. Marcello Romano is not. He's what Tommy needs. Lena's voice softened. What we both need. Aria sighed, sliding her card across the table. When it falls apart, and it will, call me. The detective left. Lena watched through the window as black SUVs appeared at both ends of the street. Her heart jumped. Not fear, but recognition. Marcello emerged from the first vehicle, flanked by trusted men. His movements were precise, controlled. He scanned the motel's facade until he found her window. Their eyes met across the distance. 1,000 words passed in that silent exchange. Tommy stirred, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Mommy? Is that? Yes, baby. Lena gathered their bags. Time to go home. The extraction was swift, professional. Marcello's men formed a protective circle as they moved from motel to vehicle. No shots fired, no violence, just the quiet efficiency of power wielded with purpose. Inside the SUV, Tommy curled against Marcello's side, already half asleep again. Marcello's hand hovered over the boy's head before settling gently in his hair. The townhouse is secure, he told Lena quietly. Enzo's network is crippled. Isabel came forward with evidence. Your sister? Lena's eyebrows rose. I thought she was loyal to him. He betrayed that loyalty. Marcello's jaw tightened. Used her daughter as leverage. They drove in silence for several minutes. The city rolled past, afternoon sun glinting off glass towers. The gambling dens? Lena finally asked. Closed. The protection rackets, too. His eyes met hers. Any operation that hurt innocent people, I shut them down. That's millions in revenue. Money can be replaced. His hand found hers in the shadows between them. Trust can't. At the townhouse, Sophia waited with hot food and fresh linens. The familiar walls felt different now. Less like a prison, more like shelter. Tommy ran to his old room, delighted to find his toys untouched. Detective Aria's unmarked car cruised past the gates twice that evening, watching, gathering evidence, but unable to act without cause. The immunity deal remained open, but they all knew Lena wouldn't take it. In the garden, as sunset painted the sky in shades of amber, Lena watched Tommy play with Sophia's cat. Marcello stood beside her, close enough to touch, but maintaining careful distance. What happens now? She asked. We rebuild. His voice was low, meant only for her. Something better. Something Tommy can be proud of. And us? He turned to face her fully. That depends on you. No more cages, no more control, just choice. Tommy's laughter floated across the garden as he chased the cat around a rosebush. The sound seemed to soften something in Marcello's face. I choose this, Lena said quietly. Us, but on equal terms. His hand found hers again, fingers intertwining. No words needed, the gesture said everything. Inside the house, Sophia prepared dinner while surveillance teams monitored the perimeter. The police maintained their watch, but tonight at least, there would be peace. The evening settled around them like a familiar blanket. Tommy helped Sophia set the table, chattering about his adventure at the motel. Marcello reviewed security reports in his study, door open for the first time since Lena arrived. Change came in small moments, a shared meal, an unlocked door, trust rebuilt one choice at a time. The danger wasn't gone, but tonight it felt distant, held at bay by stronger forces than violence. Lena stood in Tommy's doorway later, watching him sleep. Marcello's presence behind her was solid, grounding. We're home, she whispered, half to herself. His hand settled on her shoulder, warm and sure. Yes, you are. The study door clicked shut behind Lena. Marcello stood at his desk, shoulders tense beneath his tailored jacket. Night pressed against the windows, the city's lights like distant stars. We need to talk about the ledger. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. All of it. He turned, face half-shadowed. Which names? The DeMarco family. They ran protection rackets in my neighborhood 10 years ago. Their fees drove small. Businesses under? My father's shop included? Lena's fingers curled into fists. Your ledger shows monthly payments to them. Yes. No excuses, just brutal honesty. I facilitated their operations. I didn't know the extent of the damage then, but ignorance isn't innocence. Those families lost everything. I know. He moved closer, stopping when she stiffened. I was younger, focused only on power and profit. The human cost was abstract. Until Tommy and me. Until I saw what that world does to people He caught himself. To innocence. Lena crossed to his desk, spreading the ledger open. Show me everything, every operation that hurts communities like mine. For the next hour, Marcello detailed his empire's darker corners, protection rackets, gambling dens preying on addiction, money laundering through struggling businesses. His voice grew hoarser with each confession. Some of these I can dismantle immediately, he said. Others are more complex. There will be resistance, violence. Do it anyway! Lena's eyes blazed. Or Tommy and I walk for good. The power vacuum could make things worse. Other families will move in. Then fill it with something better. She stepped closer. Fund legitimate businesses. Create real jobs. Show Tommy that change is possible. Marcello's hands gripped the desk edge. You're asking me to give up control. Power I spent decades building. I'm asking you to build something worthy of the man who reads bedtime stories to my son. The words hit him like physical blows. He moved to the window, staring out at his domain. What are your terms? 3 things. Lena's voice was firm. First, you publicly close the operations we discussed. Make it clear the territory is off limits. That's millions in revenue. My enemies will see weakness. Second, she continued, you fund a community project in my old neighborhood. The elementary school needs renovation. Make it legitimate through proper channels. His jaw worked. And third, Tommy and I need legal protection and complete autonomy. No more cages, even gilded ones. We stay because we choose to, not because we have to. Silence stretched between them. Marcello's empire had been built on absolute control. Surrendering it went against every instinct. Finally, he turned. I agree, but I need something from you. What? Trust. He closed the distance between them. When the streets turn violent, and they will, trust that I'm trying to protect, not control. Lena's breath caught as his hand cupped her cheek. Show me I can. The kiss was different from their others. Slower, deeper, heavy with promise. She felt the tremor in his hands as they slid down her arms, the careful way he waited for her permission before each touch. They made love on the leather couch, moonlight painting silver stripes across their skin. Every kiss was a promise, every touch an apology. Marcello whispered Italian endearments against her throat, and for once, his carefully maintained control cracked. Ti proteggerò, he breathed. I will protect you. Lo so, she answered. I know. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat cooling on their skin. Marcello traced patterns on her bare shoulder while Lena listened to his heartbeat. Tomorrow, he said quietly, I'll start dismantling the DeMarco operations. The school funding will take longer to arrange legally, but I'll make it happen. And the autonomy? His arms tightened briefly. You and Tommy are free to come and go, but please, his voice roughened, please choose to stay. Lena propped herself up to meet his eyes. Build something better, and we will. Outside the study window, a car engine turned over. Detective Arya sat in her unmarked vehicle, documenting comings and goings. She couldn't touch Marcello yet, not without evidence or testimony. But she could watch and wait. Inside, Lena and Marcello dressed slowly, reluctant to break their bubble of peace. The night felt fragile, like spun glass, but something had shifted. Trust, like love, would have to be earned day by day. I should check on Tommy, Lena said, buttoning her blouse. Marcello nodded, already rebuilding his composed facade. But when she reached the door, he called out softly, Lena? She turned. I won't let the past repeat itself. His eyes held hers. I swear it. She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She believed him completely. The study door closed behind her with a gentle click. In the hallway, Sophia appeared silently with fresh towels and a knowing smile. Upstairs, Tommy slept peacefully, unaware of the promises made in his name. Marcello remained in his study, making calls that would reshape his empire. Each number dialed was another step away from the man he'd been, toward the man Lena believed he could become. Change would come with a price. But watching Lena's silhouette pass his window, Tommy's small hand in hers as they crossed the moonlit garden, Marcello knew it was worth any cost. Detective Aria's car idled at the curb, a reminder that the law's eyes never closed. But tonight, at least, the watching could wait. Tonight was for new beginnings, fragile trust, and promises whispered in the dark. Steam curled from fresh loaves as Lena arranged them in the display case. Morning light streamed through the bakery's freshly painted windows, catching on the gold lettering. Tommy's Sweet Corner. 3 weeks had transformed the abandoned storefront into something warm and inviting. "These smell amazing, Ms. Moretti." Mrs. Chen from next door inhaled deeply, selecting her usual wheat roll. "Such a difference from that old pawn shop." Lena smiled, wrapping the bread. "Thank you. Tommy helped knead these himself yesterday." The neighborhood was warming to them gradually. Each morning brought familiar faces, teachers grabbing coffee before class, workers picking up lunch, mothers with strollers seeking afternoon treats. Small victories, but meaningful ones. Across the street, one of Marcello's men sat in an unmarked car, protection that blended with the urban landscape. The arrangement was part of their new normal, like the weekly deposits that appeared in the bakery's account, or the quiet way problems disappeared before reaching her door. Tommy burst from the back room, flour dusting his school uniform. "Mama, I made the stars all by myself." She brushed white powder from his hair. "Perfect timing, you'll be late for school." The community center renovation had included the elementary school, transforming it from a crumbling building to a place of possibility. Tommy's teacher had called yesterday, praising his progress. "Sophia's waiting outside," Lena reminded him. The housekeeper had become Tommy's regular escort, another thread in their carefully woven safety net. The morning rush ebbed by 10. Lena checked her accounts, legitimate ones properly registered and taxed. The bakery wasn't just a front. It was her Declaration of Independence, funded by Marcello's careful restitution. Detective Aria appeared just before lunch, as she did each week. She ordered coffee and leaned against the counter. "Everything staying quiet?" she asked, her tone professional but kind. "Yes." Lena handed her a blueberry muffin, on the house. "The new management at the docks seems different." Aria nodded. The transfer of Marcello's more problematic operations had been handled delicately. New managers, vetted carefully, ran things with strict rules about civilian involvement. "Enzo's trial starts next month," Aria mentioned. "Isabel's testimony is solid. He won't see daylight for decades." The name still made Lena's shoulders tense, but Enzo's arrest had broken his faction's power. His men had scattered or switched allegiance. "The protective arrangement stands," Aria continued. "No prosecution, no testimony needed. Just keep running your business, raising your boy. And Marcello? As long as he maintains the new status quo, we maintain our understanding." Aria's smile was slight but genuine. Change is possible, even in this city. The afternoon brought more customers. Students from the community center's new after-school program, elderly residents who appreciated having fresh bread within walking distance. Lena served them all, learning names, building connections. At 3, Tommy returned from school, bubbling with stories about art class and multiplication tables. He settled at his homework table in the corner, a space Lena had created just for him, visible from every angle of the shop. Marcello visited briefly at 4, as he often did. His suit was impeccable as always, but his demeanor had shifted subtly. He still commanded attention, but the raw menace had softened around the edges. "The community center opens next week," he said, accepting a coffee. "The mayor will attend." Lena raised an eyebrow. "You're doing?" "Legitimate channels." His smile was private, though some encouragement was needed. They had found a careful balance. Marcello remained who he was, dangerous when crossed, protective of his interests. But he channeled that power differently now, building instead of breaking. Tommy ran to hug him, and Marcello's transform was instant, his face softening as he lifted the boy. "Did you practice your reading?" "See, I can read all of chapter 3 now." Their domestic moments still startled Lena. The feared Mafia boss, helping with homework, teaching Italian, sharing bedtime stories. It shouldn't work, but somehow it did. The day wound down slowly. Lena counted receipts, cleaned displays, and prepared dough for tomorrow. Her small staff, all local hires, left at 5. The routine felt earned, each normal moment a victory. At 6, she flipped the sign to closed and started her closing checklist. The street outside had turned golden with sunset, casting long shadows through the windows. Headlights swept the storefront. Marcello's black sedan idled at the curb, Tommy already buckled in the back seat. Through the tinted windows, Lena glimpsed flowers on the seat, roses and lilies, her favorites. The scene struck her as beautifully ordinary. A family waiting to go home, a bouquet marking some small celebration, her son safe and happy. Yet nothing about them was truly ordinary. She locked up carefully, checking each door and window. Her keys jingled in the quiet street, not the same keys she'd used to lock up the first time. These opened something built on choice rather than desperation. Marcello stepped out to open her door, ever the gentleman. His hand brushed her lower back. Possessive, but not controlling. Protective, but not imprisoning. They had learned the difference. "Ready?" he asked. Lena glanced back at her bakery, at the street she'd once sold trinkets on, at the neighborhood slowly healing its wounds. Then she looked at Tommy's smiling face through the window and Marcello's patient eyes. "Yes," she said. "Ready." The car pulled away smoothly. Behind them, Detective Aria's unmarked vehicle maintained its usual discreet distance, a guardian rather than a threat. The city flowed past their windows, transformed by 3 weeks of small changes and careful choices. Tommy chattered about his day. Marcello listened intently, one hand resting on Lena's knee. The roses perfumed the car with promise, and ahead lay home, not a prison or a shelter, but a place they had chosen together. Sunlight streamed through the bakery's front windows, catching dust motes and golden beams. Lena wiped flour from her hands, surveying the morning's work. Fresh loaves cooling on racks, pastries arranged in neat rows, the small but steady stream of regular customers who now knew her by name. Through the window, she watched Tommy circling the park on his new bicycle, fire engine red with a silver bell and a blue ribbon fluttering from the handlebar. Marcello had presented it last week, complete with a handwritten note. "Every boy deserves a proper bike, no strings attached. M." The community center across the street bustled with weekend activity. Children's laughter spilled from its doors, mixing with the sounds of art classes and tutoring sessions. The building's facade bore a modest plaque. Romano Community Foundation. Marcello's legitimate contribution to the neighborhood's renewal. "Mrs. Rossetti says enrollment's up again," Sophia mentioned, arranging cookies in the display case. The older woman had transitioned from housekeeper to bakery manager, her quiet efficiency perfect for the role. "The after-school program has a waiting list now?" Lena nodded, pleased. The center represented more than just a building. It was proof that change was possible, even in their complicated world. The bell above the door chimed. Marcello entered, his suit perfectly tailored as always, but his presence had evolved. The raw menace that once cleared rooms had mellowed into something more controlled, more purposeful. He still commanded attention, but now it came with respect rather than fear. "The opening ceremony starts at 11, he said, accepting a coffee from Sophia. His fingers brushed Lena's wrist as she passed, a small intimacy that still sent electricity through her skin. "Tommy's excited about the ribbon cutting," Lena replied. "He's been practicing his wave." Marcello's smile was private, tender. "I saw him in the park. He's getting better at corners." Their domestic moments still felt surreal sometimes, the feared Mafia boss discussing bicycle skills and children's ceremonies. But they had found their rhythm, built on clear boundaries and mutual respect. Detective Aria appeared briefly, as she often did on weekend mornings. Her visits had become more collegial than investigative. "The transfer of the dock operations is holding steady," she reported. "No civilian involvement, everything above board." "As agreed," Marcello said simply. His empire had contracted but stabilized. Key operations remained under his control, but the more problematic ventures had been carefully dismantled or transferred to vetted management. Arya nodded to Lena. "The protective arrangement stands. Your bakery's success is good for the neighborhood." After she left, Isabel arrived. Her first visit in weeks. The reconciliation with her brother remained tentative, weighted by history, but healing had begun. She brought pastries from her own cafe across town and news about Enzo's continuing trial. "The prosecution has everything they need," she said. "His network is finished." Marcello squeezed her shoulder. a rare gesture of affection that made Isabel's eyes bright. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. By 10:30, Lena closed the bakery for the ceremony. She and Marcello walked to the park, where Tommy showed off his improving cycling skills. The morning sun warmed the spring air, carrying the scent of fresh grass and possibility. Their new home, a townhouse chosen together, not assigned, waited nearby. That morning had been slow and tender, Marcello waking her with kisses, their bodies finding each other with practiced passion. She had marked his shoulder with her nails. He had whispered Italian endearments against her skin. The intimacy felt earned now, chosen rather than coerced. "Watch, Mommy," Tommy called, executing a wobbly turn. "Marcello taught me yesterday." Marcello knelt beside the bicycle, steadying it with strong hands. "Remember what I showed you about balance?" His voice held infinite patience. "That's it. You're getting it." Lena watched them together, her son and the man who had transformed himself for love. The changes weren't perfect. Marcello would always be dangerous to his enemies, but he had learned to channel that power differently, to build rather than destroy. Tommy dismounted, hugging Marcello impulsively. "Will you help me practice more after the ceremony?" "Of course." Marcello's face softened as he held the boy. "I promise to keep you safe, remember? That includes bicycle skills." The moment caught in Lena's throat, this fierce, complicated man making such simple promises. She remembered their first encounter in the rain, her desperate sales pitch, his calculating eyes, how far they had come. Marcello rose, drawing her close. His kiss was possessive but gentle, marking territory they had negotiated together. "You're mine forever," he whispered against her ear, the words both command and question. Lena smiled, setting her hand against his chest where his heart beat steady and true. "Then keep me," she answered. "But remember my rules." His chuckle was warm. "Always my love." They walked toward the community center, Tommy wheeling his bicycle beside them. The ribbon on the handlebar danced in the spring breeze, red and gold catching sunlight, delicate but resilient, like the happiness they had fought to build. The crowd gathered for the ceremony parted instinctively for Marcello, but their faces showed respect rather than terror. He had earned this too, the right to build something legitimate, to protect without destroying. Lena took her place beside him, Tommy between them. The ribbon fluttered, a small flag marking their victory over darkness. They had found their balance, not perfect, but real, not given, but chosen, not despite their scars, but because of them. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.